Hey! Oh my goodness. You make it here safely? Anybody follow you? Okay. Good, good. Thank you for coming. Okay. Check out the place. It's really great. It's abandoned, but everything is still on. We got electricity, plumbing, heating and cooling. There's even a lot of cool stuff in here. Like, this place is like, there's a lot of stuff in here we can sort through. You know, everything from useful supplies like, you know, survival things, weapons, hygiene stuff, entertainment, first aid. We've got it all here, and everything is working, and it is safe here. You are safe now. You are safe here. Okay, so Bible study. Yeah, so first of all, I know we touched on this a little bit, but we weren't really in a safe place where we could talk before. I'm not an expert on the Bible by any means. I've never been to seminary, which is like the special school that people go to become like church leaders and stuff. But, you know, I'm a Christian and I have a Bible and all the basic stuff. So, remind me, how much do you know about Christianity in the Bible again? Okay. Let me start up some coffee first. Actually, we got a coffee maker right here. I hope you don't mind. It's like right next to you. It's like right by your head. So you're gonna hear the noises, but let me just get the coffee set up first. Yeah. Sorry, 1 second. Having trouble multitasking. So what I'd like to do after I get this coffee going is start from the absolute beginning. Like, you are completely unfamiliar with Christianity and the Bible, other than some super ultra basic stuff. So I kind of want to just start from like absolute zero of you knowing nothing, and we will work from there. Right now you're the only one here. Jules and Seth are the ones who found this place and got it all secure and stuff, but they won't be joining us today. Alright, there we go. Coffee's going. Alright, so what is the Bible? I got one here. The box is a little tattered, but the Bible in there is so good. Okay, so the Bible in modern times is a collection of books. From what I understand, these books have all been written at different times by different people for different reasons in different languages, and they've all sort of been compiled together. The history of how each book made it into the Bible, I'm not sure of exactly. I've heard little bits and pieces. But it might not all be the same. Or, hold on, I've heard bits and pieces, but I don't know how much of it's true or not, and I don't remember a whole lot of it. We're going to go through what I do know. So, this is the ESV. ESV stands for English Standard Version. Basically, since the Bible is originally written in languages other than English, there are different translations, and each translation has its own name, and its own story of why it came to be. I like the ESV because growing up it was always the easiest to understand. There's a lot of like fancy Bible language and stuff, and it doesn't really actually show how people talk. So I liked the ESV growing up because it kind of read like plain English and was easy to understand. But I don't know how good it is in terms of accuracy, but we'll figure all that out together. We don't need to know everything right now. So, I mentioned that the Bible has different books. I'm going to help you understand the table of contents. This, by the way, is a study Bible. The way that a study Bible works, I'll show you what it looks like in a minute, is it gives you extra notes to help you understand things a little better. So, all right, there's a table of contents. So there's two halves of the Bible, the Old Testament and the New Testament. And the Old Testament is basically everything before Jesus, and the New Testament is everything after Jesus. Jesus, of course, being the main figure of Christianity, who is God come down in human form, to sort of heal our relationship with God and save and protect our souls. That's the way I'll explain it now, but we'll get to that at some point. So, if I recall correctly, there's 66 books in the Bible. The first book of the Bible is called Genesis, which is sort of the origin of everything. And then the New Testament starts off with 4 books called Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, which go over the story of Jesus, but written by different people, and it covers some slightly different things. Now, this is something that I think is important to say, but everyone's going to see this a little differently. I believe that the stories in the Bible are true, at least for the most part. I see the Bible as a historical record of real things that happened, and just like any real historical record, there are going to be some things that aren't quite absolutely perfect. A lot of people view the Bible as being divined from God, as if every word was dictated directly by God. They may not say it in those words, but that's kind of how they see it. I'm not of that opinion. So when I read this, I think I see it a little differently than a lot of other Christians do, because they're sort of looking at it as a matter of faith. And faith to them, if you're raised in a Christian community, which I was, is basically taught to you as you believe because you're supposed to believe. Some might even say you should believe because there's strong evidence, but you, the individual who's hearing this, don't have that evidence. So you're basically just putting blind faith in the idea that the evidence is there. I want you to come into this with an open mind that this could be true. I want you to come in with an open mind that this could all be made up. I want you to come in with an open mind that it could be partially true and partially made up. And I really want to just have a truth-seeking mentality about this, where we care about truth. I think the coffee's almost done. I want to have a mentality about this where we care about truth and where we care about what's real and what's not real, and just go into this with with curiosity, and yeah, that's pretty much what I have to say here. So, now that we've given an overview of the Bible and now that the coffee is done, let's take a brief coffee break, and then we'll get back into it. It's usually typical for Bible studies to start off with a prayer. That always felt a little strange to me, but the idea of having a Bible study without one also feels a little strange to me. So I'll let you decide. Do you think we should pray, or do you think we should kind of just talk about the Bible and get into it? Okay. Alright, let's get our coffee and see how we feel once we're done getting coffee about the prayer or not. So, I am afraid I don't have sugar, but I don't know if you've ever had coffee with heavy cream, but I'm never going back to sugar again in my coffee after trying heavy cream. So I have heavy cream, and if you like, I can pour you the amount that I like, or you can experiment and pour it yourself, up to you. But let me give you a cup of coffee first. Okay, there you go. I'll pour the cream in yours in a second. I'm going to pour my own coffee first. Okay. Pardon me, I'm just going to set it right here. Heavy cream. Alright, some for you first. Would you like? You can pour it yourself if you want. Okay. Alright, and then mine. There we go. I like this. Oh. Look how white and creamy that looks. Yeah. Okay. Take a little sip. Okay. I think that praying would actually help me get my mind a little focused. So, hello, God. Thank you for this safe place and for the opportunity to study the Bible, for our copy of the Bible, for everything we have, our safety, our comforts, the fact that we can read, and the fact that me and my friend here are gathered today. Thank you so much, God, that we have our friend joining us. Thank you so much that we're going to get a chance to learn and to get to know each other. And I'm looking forward to making this a regular thing, God. Please help me to be wise in what I share and what I teach. Please bring wisdom to our friend to have good questions, to listen with an open mind, and help us just to enjoy this time together. Thank you so much. And yeah, I mean, God, this is like a big undertaking. I am a nobody, and you know, just trying to teach the Bible without like an expert here, it's a big task for me. So help me to do this with justice, just like Moses, who, by the way, Moses, we'll tell the story of Moses. Just like Moses didn't believe he was capable, and you did great things through him, do the same through us. And yeah, so in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Okay. Alright, so I think that it might be a good idea to start with the book of Genesis. I don't think we necessarily have to commit to reading the whole Bible in order. Knowing myself, if I start a task like that, it's like never going to happen. So I think what I want to do is I want to go over with you in our next several sessions what you might call the Sunday school basics. The Sunday school basics are basically, if you grew up in a church, these are the stories that every kid would know. These are the easy doctrines, the stuff that everybody is taught that we all should know. And I just want to go over those things. So, before we even get into Jesus, he is the most important figure. We do have to set the context. We do have to kind of give the origin stories for everything that happened. So, let's take a look at the book of Genesis. Genesis, like the word generate, is like to make something. So this is basically a book that kind of talks about like the beginning of everything. The beginning of creation, the history of humanity, God's relationship with people, just sort of laying the stage for everything we're going to learn in the Bible itself. So I'm going to open up to Genesis. Not sure if I'm going to read word for word or if I'm just going to kind of like skim it over and summarize what I'm seeing. Because again, I'm not a big fan of fancy Bible language, but I also don't want to make you sit here and wait while I look and read in my head and then say out loud. So we'll figure out what works. So there's a table of contents. Ooh, I'm looking at the contents, and there's a list of charts and diagrams, list of character profiles, illustrations, abbreviation, and an introduction, a user's guide to the ESV Student Study Bible. I think we should actually start with the study guide. Yeah, let's check that out first, and then we'll check out a preface of the ESV and an overview of the Bible, and then we'll move into Genesis. Alright, I'm not going to touch on it too long though. I'm not going to go over all of it. Just see if anything stands out to me. Yeah, okay. Alright, introduction. Apparently the first ESV study Bible was first published in 2008. This one's a little different. They've like condensed some things or whatever. I'm not going to go into a lot of the details that get into the framework of studying, because one thing I've noticed is that there are a lot of people who have a very great way of looking at the Bible and learning the Bible, and there are a lot of people who oversimplify things and say things that sound wise and like very fluffy and spiritual but aren't good, and I don't feel a need to really go over this. I'll give you my own thoughts as I go along, and if you ever want to borrow this, you can borrow this. Alright. I'm skipping through some of the stuff in the preface. Overview of the Bible. The headings are God's plan for history, God's promises and predictions, God's warnings and curses, God's covenant commitment and instruction, Christ and the offspring of Abraham and the last Adam. I don't know what that means. Yeah, none of this looks particularly useful right now. There's information about the Old Testament that I'm going to skip. There's a date chart, so we might come back to that later and refer to that, but not now. Genesis. Okay, I am going to read some of this to you about Genesis because it's giving things like dates, and I think that's useful because if this really is true, if this is real history, knowing the history and the timeline of things could be helpful. So I'm going to read a little paragraph here, all right? Traditionally, Moses is considered to have been the author of Genesis and the rest of the Pentateuch. I don't know what the Pentateuch is, but it's giving us a reference to a few other places in the Bible where we could go to look it up. Not going to do that. All right. Of course, Moses lived much later than the events of Genesis. Presumably, stories were passed down about these earlier events and Moses brought them all together. So there's some speculation about who wrote Genesis and the first several books of the Bible. Moses is what I heard, but again, we don't know that for certain. At least not as far as I know. Maybe there's extremely compelling evidence that we don't know about, but Moses, by the way, you're going to hear that name. We'll learn about him later. Moses is one of the Sunday school basics, so we'll get into that. The first audience would have been the Israelites Moses led through the wilderness. The Israelites were a nation of people. Again, Sunday school basics. We'll get to that later. For readers today, Genesis is an essential introduction to the rest of the Bible. It's rightly called the Book of Beginnings. There's a timeline up here. I'll let you take a look at that real quick, but this is what, we're told, but I've heard reason to be concerned that these dates aren't quite accurate. So we'll touch on that later, but this is something to work with for now, and we'll just change it if we have to. But essentially, there was creation, which doesn't have a set date, and then there's the call of Abraham. Abraham is an important figure in the Bible. That happened, it's estimated, 2091 BC, so basically a little over 4,000 years ago. Then in 1876 BC, Israel goes to Egypt. Israel is a person. The Israelites are his descendants. And then in 1446 BC, there's the Exodus from Egypt. Exodus is, from what I understand, like a mass, migration. So the Exodus from Egypt is when Moses and the Israelites left Egypt, which is where they lived. So we'll get into that also at a future date. Okay. Genesis. Now, if you look, here's how the Bible's divided up. Within each book, there are chapters and verses and headings. Now, from what I understand, the chapters and the verses were arbitrarily made but they're standardized throughout, like, all the Bibles. Like, if I were to say, go to Genesis 5:29, that means go to the book of Genesis, chapter 5, verse 29. One second. Okay. Now, the headings were named by people. When I was growing up, I used to like the headings. This one, for example, says Creation of the World. And it reads like a newspaper, so you do go left to right, and then you go down the columns. Anyways, the headings were useful when I was a kid, because it would kind of give you like a little bit of an idea about what's being talked about next. However, I learned something. I won't get too deep into it now. Something a little bit scandalous, that the Bible talks about gender roles and about men and women, and how God made men and women, and how men are supposed to behave and women are supposed to behave. And I heard what I found to be a very compelling case, that a lot of the versions were using headings to divide up sections that shouldn't have been divided, so that they could like play with the translations in a way that made it seem like God was giving different orders for men versus women than he actually was, like trying to obfuscate the meaning. So there's a little bit of politics behind Bible translations, but again, we don't have to know everything. We don't have to worry about getting it perfect. We'll start with what we have, and if we learn it wrong, we can relearn it later, so it's okay. We're just gonna get started, but I thought I'd state that. Alright, so I figure we'll go till about an hour, because I want us to make sure that we're safe. I don't want anyone to get suspicious that we're gone too long. So let's cut it off at like around an hour, and then we'll get out of here. Although if you really do want to stay here, there is a bed and you can stay as long as you need. Again, you're safe here. So, but I'm probably going to go in like an hour. I don't want anyone to get suspicious about my whereabouts, because I'm fairly busy, and if I'm gone for a long period of time, people are going to notice, and we don't want that. So, alright. The creation of the world. Because it is Sunday School Basics, I am going to actually read this and not just skim it over. Okay. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening and there was morning, the first day. Okay. So basically, Earth was shapeless. There's a lot of debate about what this means. Some people say that this was the beginning of creation, and that God made it, and that this was just how the earth started off. But then I also recently learned about this idea that the earth had been around for a lot longer, and God created like angels, like these supernatural entities before humans, and that they messed up the planet with like war or whatever. I don't know. There's a lot to dive into here. So anyways, earth is, not habitable really, not formed fully. God makes light, or at least he lets light into the atmosphere, depending on who you're talking to. But he wanted there to be light on the earth. There was light on the earth. And he named the day, and he named the night. He created the day and the night, however that works. The day and the night is just the earth turning, and different parts of the earth being closer or further from the sun. So what does that really mean, that he separated the day and the light? Definitely some confusing stuff there. And I would say we do have to keep an open mind to the possibility that maybe this is all just folk tales, and that it's not scientifically valid. But point is, where there's a question, there's something interesting to find. So where something doesn't make sense, we can note that and dig into it at our will. So, but moving forward, it's been the first day. God made the night and He made the night and the day, and that was the first day. There is speculation on whether it was one literal day, one 24-hour day, or if day is just like a metaphoric term for a period of time. But we're going to call it day because that's what's written, and we're not going to force an interpretation right now. All right, so day 1 is over. And God said, "Let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters." And God made the expanse and separated the waters that were under the expanse from the waters that were above the expanse. And it was so. And God called the expanse heaven, and there was evening and there was morning the second day. I'm actually curious if expanse means sky or if expanse is assumed to mean sky. And there are notes here that we can look at. But I don't want to dig into those now because I'd like to make a little more progress. But I would like to point out here, see this line right there? That separates the actual Bible from the notes. So if at any point we do want to look into something a little more, we can look up the footnotes and get the details about that. So let's just try to get through the creation story. So there was evening and there was morning the second day. And God said, "Let the waters under the heavens be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the waters that were gathered together He called seas. And God saw that it was good. And God said, "Let the earth sprout vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees bearing fruit in which is their seed, each according to its kind on the earth." And it was so. And the earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed according to their own kinds, and trees bearing fruit in which is their seed, each according to its kind. And God saw that it was good, and there was evening and there was morning the third day. So, day 3, He makes land and ocean, and He creates plants. And the interesting thing about the plants is that they're basically divided by species. They're divided by kinds, not species, because species is a little bit more of a modern and specific word. But He makes different types of plants that can like give seeds and regrow other plants of the same kind. And God said, "Let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens, and let the day..." And God said, "Let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years." So basically He's making stars, and He's setting things up so that we can use the stars for calendars to measure time. "And let the lights in the expanse of the heavens, and let them be lights in the expanse of the heavens to give light upon the earth." And it was so. So, the stars and stuff are for calendars, tracking time, and they're also for just not being too dark at night, I guess. And God made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night, and the stars. So I guess that's like the moon is the lesser light. So, and God set them in the expanse of the heavens to give light on the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good, and there was evening and there was morning the 4th day. So 4 days are over, and things are coming along. And God said, "Let the waters swarm with swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the expanse of the heavens." So God created the great sea creatures and every living creature that moves, with which the waters swarm, according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good, and God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters and the seas, and let the birds multiply on the earth." And there was evening and there was morning the 5th day. So God now creates a whole bunch of sea creatures. He creates a whole bunch of birds. He creates like all the land animals, it seems like, if I'm understanding this correctly. And He's telling them to basically reproduce. and to kind of increase in number, increase their population, and fill up the earth. Which makes me wonder how many started, how many were in the beginning. All right, let's see. So not really land creatures, I think. Just water creatures and birds. Because now we're moving into verse 24 of chapter 1, where it says, "And God said, let the earth bring forth living creatures according to their kinds, livestock and creeping things, and beasts of the earth according to their kinds." And it was so. So this sounds like basically all the animals, because there's livestock, like sheep, cows, goats. And then there's beasts of the earth, probably like, scarier creatures, bears and, I don't know, rhinoceros and maybe dinosaurs. We'll get into dinosaurs later because I would make the case that dinosaurs are mentioned in the Bible. That's not canon, though. That's not what I was raised being taught, but we'll get into that later. Dinosaurs in the Bible. All right. Ooh, also aliens in the Bible. We'll talk about that too. All right. And God said, let the earth bring forth We already read that. So God saw that it was good. This is day 6 to remind you. So, day 6, he's making all the creatures. Then God said, let us make man in our image after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him, male and female he created them. So man, basically, what it's saying is that man refers to humans, and that this was after the creation of the creatures, it seems like, but on the same day as the creatures. It sounds like Adam, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Sounds like man was designed to have dominion over, which I understand to be like caretakers, managers, whatever it is, of the creatures, all the creatures. All right. And God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the heavens and over every living thing that moves on the earth. So I want to pause there for a second. That's the end of verse 28, by the way. When I was growing up, my understanding basically is that this means that humans are more important than animals, which I still believe to be the case, but the word choice it's using makes it sound like we're in control of animals, like we have a right to control them. But I think there's also a case to be made that we're supposed to be caretakers of animals. So there's a little bit of a difference in interpretation here, and the word choice definitely seems to suggest the way that we use these words in modern English, like it's some sort of control over them, but I'm not sure which is the case, so I'm just putting that out there. But I'm of the opinion that we're supposed to take good care of animals. I do think we can eat them, but I do think we're supposed to take care of them. That's my understanding. Not my understanding from the Bible, but that's just what makes sense to me. After this, by the way, because that reminds me, there are two very important words I have to teach you that are going to matter when we're studying the Bible. So I'll finish up chapter 1 real quick, and then I'll get into those words. Okay. And God said, behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is on the face of the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit, you shall have them for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the heavens, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has the breath of life, I have given every green plant for food. And it was so. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the 6th day. So, we finished up with the creation of humans. It's been 6 days. And with 6 days, we'll move into chapter 2, because that's the end of chapter 1. Now, those words, They're called Isogesis and Exegesis. Those are big words. We'll probably use them later, so you don't have to memorize them now. But exegesis, if I remember correctly, and I don't know much about these words, so after I give you their definition, how I describe the importance of each concept is going to be a little bit unique to my thoughts here. Exegesis is the idea that you read the Bible and get meaning out of the Bible. Whereas eisegesis is that you come into reading the Bible with your own opinions and you put your own opinions into the Bible. Now, there are a lot of people, and this is maybe where it's a little bit of a blessing that we don't have somebody official teaching this Bible study, because I think a lot of them are trained to do this in a way, is to read the Bible and assume that there's a certain meaning and put the meaning in the Bible, instead of getting the meaning out of the Bible of, is that actually what it's saying? Now, eisegesis is considered to be not a good thing, from what I've heard, mainly from Christian podcasters and stuff. You're supposed to do exegesis. Just read the Bible and interpret what it says and not put your own meaning into it. And eisegesis is considered not a good thing. I'm not sure if I agree with that. Sometimes the Bible seems to be saying something that doesn't seem right and doesn't make any sense at all. And I think it's okay to use our intuition to be like, that doesn't sound right. From what I've seen of the world, this other interpretation makes a little more sense, and I think that the Bible may mean this. That might be considered eisegesis. I think that's okay. I think the problem is assuming. If we're assuming that our eisegesis is correct and that our interpretation of the Bible, putting our worldview into the Bible, if we assume that we're correct and the Bible must be wrong, I think that's the problem. But I also think it's a problem to read the Bible, interpret it a certain way, and then assume that our understanding of the Bible is true, even if it doesn't make sense, even if it doesn't seem to fit with real life. And I'll give you an example of this. This stuck with me a lot. There was an interview I saw on YouTube many years ago. I can't find it. I've been looking. I still can't find it. It was a very old event that happened. This girl, a long time ago, she loved God very much. Her parents sent her away to a convent to become a nun, and she was very abused in that convent. And she still loved God, and she believed that God loved her suffering. The nuns would beat her, starve her, chain her up, and they told her that every time they hurt her, that God was smiling in happiness that she was being hurt. And this little girl loved God so much that she actually was happy. She's like, well, I'm glad that me getting hurt makes God happy. So here's why I mention this. To show that this girl was someone who loved God so much, she would do pretty much whatever God wanted, even though we would say that's obviously wrong. But here's where it gets interesting. At some point, this creepy older pastor said, you know what? As a pastor, he might not have been a pastor. He might have been a priest or like a bishop. I don't know. I don't understand Catholicism all that much. Catholicism is a branch of Christianity that's pretty organized, and they kind of have a lot of their own like rules and almost their own like system of government in a way that's like bigger than other church branches. So this, church dude, this Catholic high-ranking individual was like, hey, since I am in this role that I am in, I am essentially the bride of Christ. So I'm a proxy for Jesus. And brides, they're supposed to sleep with their husbands. So you have to sleep with me. And it's okay. It's not a sin, because I basically am a stand-in for Jesus. And you're the bride of Christ, so I'm basically your husband. Now, again, this is a girl who loved God so much that when she was beaten, tortured, abused, she was just happy that God was happy. But something in her felt like this was wrong. She didn't know what it was. She couldn't prove it wasn't in the Bible. It sounded logical. But she was like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. This doesn't sound right to me. And of course, knowing what we know, it absolutely was wrong. But my thinking was, she was told that something was godly, and yet something in her felt like it was wrong, and she didn't listen to what she was told, even though she couldn't prove that what she was being told was ungodly and unbiblical. And it made me think, what if it's not such a bad thing to challenge our understanding of the Bible? I'm not even saying, because of course there's the perspective that the Bible might not be true, right? But setting that aside, let's assume for a moment that the Bible is true. What if us disagreeing with the Bible sometimes, feeling like it's wrong, what if that's because there's some part of our intuition that knows something? And growing up in a Christian culture, I was kind of taught, the world is secular. You can't listen to the way the world does things. You have to just trust the Bible. And people who refuse to believe parts of the Bible because, it doesn't sound right to them, the heart can be misleading, which I agree, the heart can be misleading. But they kind of use this idea that the heart can be misleading, like as a way to basically make it sound like it's inherently wrong to think that maybe our understanding of a certain Bible passage is incorrect. They make it sound like it's wrong to trust our intuition if something about our wisdom doesn't seem like it matches the Bible. And that's why I say I'm not choosing a hard stance. Oh, I'm automatically going to believe the Bible no matter what. Or, oh, I am automatically going to trust my own judgment no matter what. I'm going to think to myself that things have to make sense both ways. And if something doesn't fit, if my judgment doesn't fit with my understanding of the Bible, one or both of those things could be wrong, or both of them could be right, and there's a way to reconcile it that I'm just not making sense of. I'm not going to assume one way or the other. But all this to say is that I don't think exegesis is the ideal. I don't think extrapolating our understanding purely from the Bible is necessarily the gold standard. I think that sometimes eisegesis, extrapolating our opinions from the world, from our intuition, from our judgment, and seeing if that maybe fits the Bible in a way that the words don't sound like it's saying in our English translation, I think that that can be okay. As long as we're being clear about it and honest about it. As long as we're not behaving as though our personal interpretation of the Bible is what the Bible is saying. So that's something important. We've been talking about this for a little while. We've gone over the Sunday school basics of the story of Genesis. Not the full story. I feel like the story of creation isn't complete without the story of Adam and Eve. So I am going to give you a brief overview of the story of Adam and Eve, and we can cover that later. But basically, Adam and Eve were the first two humans that God made, and their story impacts the whole rest of humanity and the whole rest of the Bible. So, just to recap real quick, the story of creation. God created the world in 6 days. Whether it's 6 literal days or 6 metaphorical days is another story, but he created the world in 6 days. The first day was separating the waters from the waters, creating kind of the heavens and the earth, creating the day and the night. I apologize. Separating the day and the night is the first day, and then separating the waters from the waters, the heaven and the earth, it's the second day. The third day was when God made the land and the oceans, and the fourth day is when God made... Third day still. I'm going to go back to the beginning because I don't want to confuse me throwing all this around. First day. Day and night. Second day. Heavens and the earth. Third day. Land and ocean, as well as plants. Day 4. Stars, moon, sun, kind of just elaborating on the whole day-night thing. That was the end of day 4. Day 5, he made the birds and the sea creatures. Day 6, he made the rest of the animals, and then he made the humans. And that's the end of day 6. And we will talk about day 7, which is canonically where we get our 7-day week from. The idea is that our week is 7 days because of the Bible, because that's how long of a time frame is sort of overlaid in Genesis. So later we'll get into day 7, which is where God is done creating and he rests. That's the idea of the weekend, having a day of rest. In Western culture, it's usually 2 days. I don't know where you come from. I don't know where you live. But in America, we typically have a 2-day weekend, which is Saturday and Sunday. From what I understand, it was created to be a 2-day weekend instead of a 1-day weekend because of some sort of history of industry and workers' culture in the U.S. They decided to give us an extra day. U.S., by the way, is short for United States of America. So you can call it America or the U.S. But wherever you are from, we'll be talking a little bit about American culture as well, just because that's where I'm from, and that could be fun for you to learn about as well. And besides, culture has a huge impact on how we interpret the Bible and live out the Bible in our daily lives. So, culture is important, and maybe you can share more about yours with me. All right. So we're going to wrap that up here. Thank you so much for coming. Again, you are safe here. You can stay as long as you need to. You can leave now with me if you want. Personally, I'm going to stick around and finish up my coffee, and then I'm going to get out of here and make my face seen by other people so that people don't catch on to what we're doing. But if you have any friends that are trustworthy, that you know are safe, feel free to bring them to the next Bible study, and I look forward to seeing you again. All right, rest well, be at peace, do what you gotta do, and I'll see you later. I'm just gonna pray real quick. Dear God, thank you so much for the Bible study we had. I think it went real well, and I had a lot of fun, and I hope we get to do this again soon, God. So, thank you. And in Jesus' name, amen. Bye.